Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Mirror Dungeon solo video. Today we'll be using a staple of Envy teams, Middle Dawn Quixote. She's technically a bleed identity, but with how little she inflicts, it's not her main focus in the slightest. Her actual main focus is, like I said, Envy Resonance. Both her skill 2 and 3 gain a crazy amount of offense level when you do have Envy Resonance, but the star of the show is easily her counter. When you have a 6+ Envy Absolute Resonance, it will convert it into an Envy version of her skill 3 and can hit incredibly hard, especially when she's attacking an enemy with her unique debuff, Vengeance Mark, which gives Dawn an extra coin power when attacking an enemy with it. Despite this though, when compared to other identities that can convert their counters into their skill 3, Middle Dawn is by far the worst. The reason for this is, unlike the other identities, the ability to pull it off is entirely outside of Dawn's control, requiring other characters to also use Envy skills, which makes it entirely RNG dependent as to whether or not you can actually pull it off. It certainly doesn't help that it requires 6 Envy skills, so in the focus encounters you are required to use exclusively Envy skills in order for it to work. This can be slightly alleviated by either using Envy defense skills or Envy egos, but that runs the risk of either doing too little damage or too much. It's a pretty powerful gimmick, don't get me wrong, but that's all it is, a gimmick. If you can pull it off, it's nice, but you should never really rely on it. Even without it though, she's still very good with the sheer amount of offense level she can gain, giving her both good damage and decent clash power. We start the run off with both Wound Claret and Little and To Be Naughty Plushie for our starting gifts, and choose Faith and Erosion for the first floor. We manage to pick up Bloody Gadget here before the boss against the Crawling Inquisitors. These guys are pretty simple to beat. They sort of just sit there and do little to nothing before you manage to do a certain amount of damage to them, at which point they will actually start to put up a fight. It's pretty easy to ignore 2 of them and take them out one by one before they can really retaliate. We take Noggle and Hammer scriptures for our reward and head into Lake World for the next floor. Here we buy Late Bloomer's Tattoo and Oracle before we make it to the boss against the Twin Hook Pirates with only 7 HP to our name. 7 HP. This is what happens when an identity doesn't have a Lust, Gloom, or Gluttony skill, cannot stall in the slightest, and fails to find a healing ego gift in time. 7 HP, boss fight. At the very least, we did pick up Oracle, which allowed us to activate G-Corp Gregor's passive, allowing us to heal a little bit whenever we win a clash, but with how strong Dawn is, it was usually only 1 clash per enemy. With us being weak to slash damage, any single hit on the first turn would result in an instant loss. The only way for us to win with such little HP is to get lucky with both one of the pirates using a defense skill and having Fluid Sac target all 3 of the attacking pirates. Afterwards, it would stagger all of them, and we would need to clash with the only non-staggered pirate the turn after. Getting this perfect RNG took a little over 30 minutes in order to line up properly. It is worth mentioning that this run was done before the update that changed this fight into being backup-based instead of wave-based, and it's a little difficult to say whether or not it would actually be harder to pull off now. I think it still would be possible. With the healing from Gregor's passive and the sanity reduction from killing enemies, it's likely we would have had barely enough in the HP in order to survive, so long as they all rolled tails on their attacks, of course. For the second wave, we still need to get a little bit lucky. Without enough skill slots to clash with everything, we are forced to eat some hits. There's not a whole lot we can do to put the odds in our favor, as Fluid Sac is out of commission for the time being, but with a little luck we managed to survive with only 1 less HP than we started with. After that, the rest of the fight is essentially won. As long as we only ever clash when attacking, we have more than enough health and skill slots to defeat the rest of the pirates. We take Grimy Iron Stake as our reward and head into Emotional Subservience for the next floor. Here we find Special Contract before making it to the boss against the Fey Lantern. This boss, while still bringing back traumatic memories, is not that bad as long as you have enough damage to break the fairy before the third turn. With the fairy also being weak to pride damage, we can quickly stagger it when it reveals itself with only a bit of bleed damage and skill 3s, and can easily defeat it after only one more cycle.
무얼 잘못했는지 아는 것부터가 시작이 됐어. 제압 예측 이대로 영영 움직이지 못하게 만들어보자. 부위가 조각났어. 계속 해도 돼.
방금 부숴버린 부위 덕에
놀라운 면모이네요. 적을 완벽히 파악하고 있으신 거군요.
부위 하나가 파괴되었어. 이대로 똑같이만 한다면 모든 부위를 파괴시킬 수 있겠지?
효과적이네요. 이 방식을 기억하는 게 좋겠어요.
We take the Rusted Muzzle for our reward and head into Treadwell Sloth for the next floor. Here we buy Lithograph, Phlebotomy Pack, Awe, Imposed Weight, and an extra skill 2. We also fuse Smokes and Wires before making it to the boss against the Dream-Devouring Slit Current. The only real threat with this fish is his Blind Obsession skill, which can and will insta-kill you through the power of Sinking Deluge. You have to clash with the skill, but with how high it rolls, egos are almost always required. The real challenge comes from the single paralysis he inflicts you with at the start of every turn, which most of the time makes winning the clash with an ego quite literally a coin flip. Thanks to some lucky speed and targeting though, we don't have to deal with this problem, as we clash with our skill 3 against a different attack first, consuming the paralysis in the process and allowing our ego to reach its maximum clash power. After you beat that single skill, the rest of the fight is pretty easy. As long as you make sure one of the flotsams are broken at all times, he will never use his Blind Obsession skill again.
방금 부숴버린 부위 덕에
상체 반응이 끊어지는 피부. 승객이 따끔 한 번 먹였어.
하나 묵혔네.
쨍그랑 부위가 조각났어. 계속 해도 돼. 좋아. 부위 하나가 말끔하게 비어졌네. 제가 팍팍 맞아 뒷가리질을 해볼까?
We take Painkillers for our reward and head into Time Killing Time for the final floor. Here we buy another skill 2, Red Stain Gossypium, Tangled Bundle, and Respite before heading into the final boss against the Time Ripper. He can always prove to be a bit of a challenge with the amount of bleed he can inflict, as well as his quite ridiculous offense level, but with bleed and offense level buffs of our own, we can match him quite handily. Of course, the only exception is the turn he enters his second phase. With his sanity regenning to 30 and without the coin power buff from Vengeance Mark, he uses one skill that we cannot reliably beat without Ego. Tanking it is also not really an option, thanks to it inflicting a ton of bleed and being so close to stagger, it would easily push us over the edge. Outside of that one skill though, the rest are easy enough for us to beat, and we can dispatch the Time Ripper in a very short amount of time. With that said though, this fight does have one final unique property to it. It is literally the only fight in the entire run where I managed to get Dawn's counter gimmick to work. Most other fights either didn't make it to turn 6, or I ended up killing the enemies before her counter could go off. It's pretty simple to get it to work against the Time Ripper though, as he has multiple parts that you can ignore, and an unclashable skill that will almost always trigger it. I almost got it to work a second time too, but of course we killed him too quickly.
효과적이네요. 이 방식을 기억하는 게 좋겠어요.
좋아, 영영 깨어날.
예사롭지가 않은데? 아주 작살을 내놨어.
개체를 구성하고 있는 진정 하나가 파괴되었습니다. 이 팀이 파괴되어도 좋을 것 같아요.
신선한 부위 하나가 또 생겼는데? 어디 보자. 그래, 장부에 이쪽 줄을 지우면 되겠군.
본인도 이번에 한몫했으니 작은 형님께서 흡족해 하시겠어.
And that's how I soloed Mirror Dungeon 4 hard using only middle Don Quixote. She's a pretty solid identity when it comes to clashing and damage, but doesn't really have any kind of niche of her own. The NV resonance does technically count, but it's more of a nice bonus than anything that should be heavily focused on, as at the end of the day it is only just a gimmick. Anyway, that's it from me. Like and subscribe to not miss next time where we'll be using this character. Goodbye!